This next story, I saw this yesterday afternoon, last night. The headline intrigued me, and I read it, and I just, I started laughing out loud. Fidel Castro fascinated by book on Bilderberg Club. This is from the Associated Press. Fidel Castro is showcasing a theory long popular both among the far left and far right, that the shadowy Bilderberg Group has become a kind of global government controlling not only international politics and economics, but even culture. The 84-year-old former Cuban dictator published an article Wednesday that used 3 of the only 8 pages in the Communist Party newspaper Grandma to quote largely verbatim from a 2006 book by Lithuanian-born writer Daniel Estulin. Estulin's work, The Secrets of the Bilderberg Club, argues that the international group largely runs the world. It has held a secretive annual forum of prominent politicians, thinkers, and businessmen since it was founded in 1954 at the Bilderberg Hotel in Holland. Castro offered no comment. This gets better. They run the world. And they didn't tell Castro. He's just learning it here at age 84. And he finds it fascinating. Castro offered no comment other than to describe Estulin as honest and well-informed and to call his book a fantastic story. Estulin's book, as quoted by Castro, described sinister cliques and Bilderberg lobbyists manipulating the public to install a world government that knows no borders and is not accountable to anyone but its own self. The Bilderberg Group's website says that its members have nearly 3 days of informal, off-the-record discussion about topics of current concern once a year, but the group does nothing else. So they get together 3 days a year and control the world. They've been doing it since 1954. And Fidel has never been invited. And he's just learning of this at age 84, after he retires. The prominence of the group is what alarms critics. It often includes members of the Rockefeller family, Henry Kissinger, senior U.S. and European officials, and major international business and media executives. The excerpt published by Castro suggested that the esoteric Frankfurt School of Socialist Academics worked with members of the Rockefeller family in the 50s to pave the way for rock and roll music to control the masses by diverting attention from civil rights and social injustice. The man charged with ensuring that the Americans liked the Beatles was Walter Lippmann himself, the excerpt asserted, referring to a political philosopher and by then staid newspaper columnist who died in 1974. In the U.S. and Europe, a great open-air rock concerts were used to halt the growing discontent of the population on civil rights and social injustice. Now, it seems to me that the Beatles were part of the civil rights and social unrest. It seems to me that the Civil Rights Act of 1964-65 was passed right in the middle of the Beatles' arrival on the scene. I can tell you that I became a Beatles fan at, what I would have been age 10, 11. I never heard of Walter Lippmann then, so he wasn't responsible for me. Well, yeah, I mean, Ed Sullivan may have been a Bilderberger for all I know now. Ed Sullivan might have been part of the conspiracy. So the Beatles were created by the Bilderberg. This Castro believes this. The Bilderberg created the Beatles in order to distract us from social unrest. Let's see, what else? Castro, who had an inside seat to the Cold War but had no idea the Bilderbergs were controlling things, has long expressed suspicions of backroom plots. He has raised questions about whether this is a serious story. This is a serious... That's why I'm laughing myself silly last night reading this. This is one of the reasons I was willing to come in. I mean, I was ready to... This week has been a hell week for me, and I was... Well, I wasn't going to call in sick. I don't do that, but When I saw this story, I got renewed. I got to come in here today. They had a conspiracy. They didn't tell Fidel about it. And he's only learning about it now when he's retired and can't join it and do anything about it. Walter Lippmann created the Beatles to distract people. Not only that, the Bilderbergs created feminism to get men and women at war with one another to distract us while they destroyed world economies. That did work. That one worked. But this Beatle thing, I'm not buying it. And it says here, Castro long expressed suspicions of backroom plots. He raised questions about whether the 9/11 attacks were orchestrated by the U.S. government to stoke military budgets. He more recently suggested that Washington was behind the March sinking of a South Korean ship blamed on the Norks. Estulin's own website suggests the 9/11 attacks were likely caused by small nuclear devices and that the CIA and drug traffickers were behind the 1988 downing of the Lockerbie Pan Am flight that was blamed on Libya. The Bilderberg conspiracy theory has been popular on both extremes of the ideological spectrum, even if they disagree on just what the group wants to do. Leftists accuse the Bilderberg Group of promoting capitalist domination, while some right-wing websites argue the Bilderberg Club has imposed Barack Obama on the U.S. to advance socialism. Some of Estulin's work builds on reports by Big Jim Tucker, a researcher on the Bilderberg Group who publishes on right-wing websites. I've been, folks, from the very first day back in Kansas City, when I uttered my first political comment on the radio, I was set upon by these conspiracy people. Oh, yes. You would, they no longer bother with me. No, I've never been to a Bilderberg meeting, certainly. No, I'm not part. Look, no. I've never been to the Bilderberg meeting. I've never been to the Socialist International. I've never been to a CFR meeting or a Trilateralist Commission meeting. Remember, I'm the guy who came up with a Kook test. Yeah, the Kook test was to distract people from me being part of the conspiracy. Yeah. Remember one of the questions on the Kook test? If Trilateralist A is driving west at 60 miles an hour, and the Council on Foreign Relations member B is driving east at 40 miles an hour, how long does it take for both of them to take over the world? It must have been Walter Lippmann that persuaded Capitol Records to finally release Beatles tunes in this country. And because that's the Bilderberger story, is that Walter Lippmann is what it took. As Capitol sat on the Beatles for a full year after they had become huge in the UK. Now, here's the Bilderberger explanation for John Lennon's assassination. Quote, on December 8th of 1980, under a full moon night, John Lennon was shot dead by a man named Mark David Chapman. It is quite unlikely that we could someday get to know whether Mark Chapman was a victim of an artificially induced model psychosis, murderer like the Manchu candidate sent by Tavistock, the CIA, and the MI6 to silence Lennon, who turned out to be even more difficult to control. Now, that's the Bilderberg theory.